And so we want to talk today about what it looks like to get into those fights and be productive in the midst of that. And so we're going to talk about a few things. And as we're talking through some of this, the concern is that some of these may feel really basic. And as you're sitting there listening to us, you may be thinking, yeah, of course, this makes sense. However, when you're in the heat of the moment and you're feeling emotional and your spouse is feeling emotional, sometimes we really have to slow ourselves down and think about these things, because it's really easy to let these things get away from us. So as we start and we're getting into this, when we're getting into a fight, one of the very first things that we want to be thinking about is, what is our goal? What is it that we're trying to accomplish when we get into it? Because when we start getting into a fight, if we're not concentrating on what it is that we're actually trying to accomplish, what we want to come out of this, then it's real easy for it to turn nasty really, really quick. So.
The other thing is just to remember that you're a team. I mean, you're working towards something together. You have a life that you've combined with somebody else, and your marriage is about moving forward and continuing to create that life for the both of you. And so it can feel very polarizing to be in a season of fighting or a moment of fighting, but to really be intentional about being next to your spouse instead of face to face with your spouse, literally or figuratively, and remembering that you're a team and you're working towards something together.
So as far as some really practical steps when you're fighting, it's really important that you don't take things to a personal place, that you don't start doing name calling and cussing each other out and stuff like that. And again, it may seem really basic, but when you're in those places where you feel like you're not being heard, where you're being hurt, it's really easy to lose sight of the goal and go to a place where you're just trying to hurt the other person. And along with that, when you're in those moments, to really slow yourself down and try and be able to hear what the other person is saying, even if their words aren't communicating well what their heart is. To slow down and go, okay, I know my spouse, I know what's important to them. What is it that they're really trying to communicate in the midst of this, even if the words aren't saying it very well?
And it's so easy to be sitting there thinking about how you're right and what your next point is, to defend how you're right and to prove your point. And our pride can just really get in the way in the whole thing. And it takes a lot of work, I know, for me to slow myself down in the midst of it and to really try to hear what Mike is saying, and to know him, like he was just saying, to know him and to know his heart, and to believe that he is good and he is for us. And maybe in the moment it's getting a little out of line, but to know who he is and to be willing to put aside my own pride, my own desire to be right, and to just really hear him, to really listen and be present in the moment, and to not let pride get the best of me.
The desire to be right is a huge one. If we feel passionately enough about something that we're willing to go start fighting with our spouse about it, we probably really feel like we're right, and it's important that they understand that. And I think that a lot of times it's perspective and go, okay, what's most important for us as we move forward?
Mm-hmm. I think one thing that Mike and I learned throughout the years is I'm somebody who likes to have things solved immediately. I want to sit down, I want to talk about it, I want it to be resolved, I want to know his perspective on it, I want him to share his thoughts. And learning along the way, Mike's an internal processor, and he needs time to think through it. He needs even a couple of days or more sometimes. And that was hard at first, to sit in some tension. And it wasn't that we were fighting for that whole time, but just to kind of sit in some unknowns about the current situation and to allow him the time to process. But I learned in being patient and in waiting for him that I got the best from him in that. I got his sound thoughts. I got some just good wisdom and some, he was able to process through the emotions around some things and really come to either some humility or some wisdom or some good stuff for us to process through. that wasn't all hyped and emotion. And so that's been really helpful. Not always easy because I want it resolved immediately, but good nonetheless for me to be patient and to wait on him and his timing to process. So, and he knows that I'm a little ratcheted by not resolving it immediately. And so he knows it's important for him to come back around and to continue talking about this. The other thing that I have really come to really rest in a lot is to maybe not engage in the fight right away, and to just sit with the Lord and sit with myself and the Lord, and to really seek what does God desire in this for us, and how does he desire for me to participate in conversation with Mike. And that leads me often to understanding some of my pieces and why we're in this fight or this disagreement, to understand where I've participated in breaking this down for us, and where I need to be forgiven or where I need to be able to give forgiveness, to come to a place of humility instead of a place of pride, and that is ruling this whole situation and is ruling my emotions and my words and my thoughts, but just to be still in it and to allow God to show me how to extend grace to myself and to Mike, and to understand his forgiveness that he's given to me, and so that's something that I can extend to Mike, and just to really to own my own mistakes and to know that that's okay, that's a good thing, that's a strong thing to admit my mistakes and to give that to Mike. It feels vulnerable, but it's actually really strong, and it's really what's needed is humility on both parts in order for us to be able to bridge the gap that we've created.
Ultimately, what we're trying to do when we're talking about fighting is figure out how we fight for our marriage and not fight against one another. One of the things we decided really early on in our marriage is that we weren't going to talk about getting divorced. That wasn't going to be on the table. It wasn't going to be part of our verbiage that when we got in a fight that there was an option to leave, because it's too easy to, as that keeps getting thrown out, it becomes more realistic and more appealing. If you're fighting often, it feels like, yeah, that's easier than this. And so take that out of the equation. When you're fighting, figure out how to fight together to move forward together instead of what it looks like to fight against one another and moving towards separation. And ultimately, that's the goal. And when you're really, really mad at your spouse, that's hard to do sometimes. So make sure that you've got language that doesn't allow you to talk about what it looks like to move forward in different directions. That all of your language says, we're in this together, so we've got to figure it out together. And in the midst of that, that means you don't want to be tearing down your spouse, because it's more stuff that you've got to go back and fix later. You don't want to be coming in and name calling and belittling and really tearing down the work that you do together, because it's all stuff that you have to build back up. So ultimately, keep in mind that the goal is to figure out how to move forward together and to do the things that are going to help you to do that, even when you're emotionally charged and frustrated. And we're all going to have those days when things just aren't great for us.
And I'll be honest, it hasn't always been easy that we have made that decision to take divorce off the table, because there have been seasons in our marriage where it was so hard and truly did not know how we were going to make it through, did not see how we were going to reconcile and heal. And it may sound like a prison sentence to say divorce is off the table, but what I've experienced in all of these years is it's actually what has provided freedom. I have really valued that being off the table, because there are so many things that the world says, you deserve better, you should be happy, you should just leave your spouse. There's all kinds of things in the world that tells us to move on and to make the commitment that you're not going to engage in that kind of a thought process. really creates a boundary for you that has helped me to stay engaged in my marriage. Like Mike said, we're in this and we're gonna fight for our marriage because that is the only option that we have allowed. And so I want us to have a good marriage. I don't want to just survive it. I want to thrive, and I want our marriage to glorify the Lord. And so that's the only thing left to fight for. We have not given ourselves the option to fight for ourselves and our own happiness and our own vision for what we want. We have given ourselves the permission to only look at our marriage and how we can fight for it. And that has been a huge, huge blessing to us that I've really appreciated, especially in those really tough seasons when we didn't know how we were going to make it through.
And ultimately, that has made us happier than we ever could have on our own. And so we realize that a lot of what we talk about addresses the really hard parts of marriage. That's been the focus. But again, we talk about those things because those things have brought us to a place where we really love and cherish marriage. We wouldn't trade it. Despite all the hardships that it's brought us, it's caused us both to grow and be better. And we absolutely believe that we're better together because we've fought through these things through the years. And we wouldn't trade it. So that's why we do the videos. That's why we continue to talk about this stuff. And as always, if you guys need anything, feel free to reach out. You can reach out at couplesupport@westwoodcc.org or drop a comment. And if there's ever anything that you'd like us to cover in any of these videos, feel free to let us know that as well. We'll keep your name out of it, but we want to be talking about the things that are important to you. So
we're for you. We're for your marriage. We want to fight with you for your marriage. And if there's anything that we can do to support you in that, we are ready for that.
We hope you have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.